Section 66 of Villette by Charlotte Bronte. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leanne Fortune, Section 66. But it is not so for all. What then? His will be done, as done it surely will be, whether we humble ourselves to resignation or not. The impulse of creation forwards it, the strength of powers, seen and unseen, has its fulfillment in charge. Proof of a life to come must be given. In fire and in blood, if needful, must that proof be written. In fire and in blood do we trace the record throughout nature. In fire and in blood does it cross our own experience. Sufferer, faint not through terror of this burning evidence. Tired wayfarer, gird up thy loins, look upward, march onward. Pilgrims and brother mourners, join in friendly company. Dark through the wilderness of this world stretches the way for most of us. Equal and steady be our tread, be our cross, our banner. For staff we have His promise, whose word is tried, whose way perfect. For present hope His providence, who gives the shield of salvation, whose gentleness makes great. For final home His bosom, who dwells in the height of heaven. For crowning prize a glory exceeding and eternal. Let us so run that we may obtain. Let us endure hardness as good soldiers. Let us finish our course and keep the faith, reliant in the issue to come off more than conquerors. Art thou not from everlasting mine, Holy One? We shall not die. On a Thursday morning we were all assembled in class, waiting for the lesson of literature. The hour was come. We expected the master. The pupils of the first class sat very still. The cleanly written compositions prepared since the last lesson lay ready before them, neatly tied with ribbon, waiting to be gathered by the hand of the professor as he made his rapid round of the desks. The month was July, the morning fine. The glass door stood ajar. Through it played a fresh breeze, and plants growing at the lintel waved, bent, looked in, seeming to whisper tidings. Monsieur Emmanuel was not always quite punctual. We scarcely wondered at his being a little late, but we wondered when the door at last opened, and instead of him, with his swiftness and his fire, there came quietly upon us the cautious Madame Beck. She approached Monsieur Paul's desk. She stood before it. She drew round her the light shawl covering her shoulders. Beginning to speak in low yet firm tones, and with a fixed gaze, she said, "This morning there will be no lesson of literature." The second paragraph of her address followed, after about 2 minutes' pause. "It is probable the lessons will be suspended for a week. I shall require at least that space of time to find an efficient substitute for Monsieur Emmanuel. Meanwhile it shall be our study to fill the blanks usefully. Your professor, ladies," she went on, "intends, if possible, duly to take leave of you. At the present moment he has not leisure for that ceremony. He is preparing for a long voyage. The very sudden and urgent summons of duty calls him to a great distance. He has decided to leave Europe for an indefinite time. Perhaps he may tell you more himself. Ladies, instead of the usual lesson with Monsieur Emmanuel, you will, this morning, read English with Mademoiselle Lucy." She bent her head courteously, drew closer the folds of her shawl, and passed from the class. A great silence fell. Then a murmur went round the room. I believe some pupils wept. Some time elapsed. The noise, the whispering, the occasional sobbing increased. I became conscious of a relaxation of discipline, a sort of growing disorder, as if my girls felt that vigilance was withdrawn and that surveillance had virtually left the class. Habit and the sense of duty enabled me to rally quickly, to rise in my usual way, to speak in my usual tone, to enjoin, and finally to establish quiet. I made the English reading long and close. I kept them at it the whole morning. I remember feeling a sentiment of impatience towards the pupils who sobbed. Indeed, their emotion was not of much value. It was only an hysteric agitation. I told them so, unsparingly. I half ridiculed them. I was severe. The truth was, I could not do with their tears, or that gasping sound. I could not bear it. A rather weak-minded, low-spirited pupil kept it up when the others had done. Relentless necessity obliged and assisted me so to accost her that she dared not carry on the demonstration, that she was forced to conquer the convulsion. That girl would have had a right to hate me, except that, when school was over and her companions departing, I ordered her to stay, and when they were gone, I did what I had never done to one among them before, pressed her to my heart and kissed her cheek. But this impulse, yielded to, I speedily put her out of the class, for upon that poignant strain she wept more bitterly than ever. I filled with occupation every minute of that day, and should have liked to sit up all night if I might have kept a candle burning. The night, however, proved a bad time, and left bad effects, preparing me ill for the next day's ordeal of insufferable gossip. Of course this news fell under general discussion. Some little reserve had accompanied the first surprise. That soon wore off. Every mouth opened, every tongue wagged. Teachers, pupils, the very servants, mouthed the name of Emmanuel. He, whose connection with the school was contemporary with its commencement, thus suddenly to withdraw! All felt it strange. They talked so much, so long, so often, that out of the very multitude of their words and rumours grew at last some intelligence. About the third day I heard it said that he was to sail in a week, then that he was bound for the West Indies. I looked at Madame Beck's face and into her eyes for disproof or confirmation of this report. I perused her all over for information, but no part of her disclosed more than what was unperturbed and commonplace. This secession was an immense loss to her, she alleged. She did not know how she should fill up the vacancy. She was so used to her kinsman, he had become her right hand. What should she do without him? She had opposed the step, but Monsieur Paul had convinced her it was his duty. She said all this in public, in class, at the dinner-table, speaking audibly to Zélie St. Pierre. Why was it his duty? I could have asked her that. I had impulses to take hold of her suddenly, as she calmly passed me in class, to stretch out my hand and grasp her fast, and say, "Stop! Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Why is it his duty to go into banishment?" But Madame always addressed some other teacher, and never looked at me, never seemed conscious I could have a care in the question. The week wore on. Nothing more was said about Monsieur Emmanuel coming to bid us good-bye, and none seemed anxious for his coming. None questioned whether or not he would come. None betrayed torment lest he should depart silent and unseen. Incessantly did they talk, and never in all their talk touched on this vital point. As to Madame, she of course could see him and say to him as much as she pleased. What should she care whether or not he appeared in the schoolroom? The week consumed. We were told that he was going on such a day, that his destination was Basseterre in Guadeloupe. The business which called him abroad related to a friend's interests, not his own. I thought as much. Basseterre in Guadeloupe! I had little sleep about this time, but whenever I did slumber, it followed infallibly that I was quickly roused with a start, while the words Basseterre, Guadeloupe, seemed pronounced over my pillow, or ran athwart the darkness round and before me in zigzag characters of red or violet light. For what I felt, there was no help, and how could I help feeling? Monsieur Emmanuel had been very kind to me of late days. He had been growing hourly better and kinder. It was now a month since we had settled the theological difference, and in all that time there had been no quarrel. Nor had our peace been the cold daughter of divorce. We had not lived aloof. He had come oftener. He had talked with me more than before. He had spent hours with me, with temper soothed, with eye content, with manner homelike and mild. Kind subjects of conversation had grown between us. He had inquired into my plans of life, and I had communicated them. The school project pleased him. He made me repeat it more than once, though he called it an Al-Nashar dream. The jar was over. The mutual understanding was settling and fixing. Feelings of union and hope made themselves profoundly felt in the heart. Affection and deep esteem and dawning trust had each fastened its bond. What quiet lessons I had about this time! No more taunts on my intellect, no more menaces of grating public shows. How sweetly, for the jealous gibe and the more jealous, half-passionate eulogy, was substituted a mute, indulgent help, a fond guidance, and a tender forbearance which forgave but never praised. There were times when he would sit for many minutes and not speak at all, and when dusk or duty brought separation, he would leave with words like these: Il est doux, le repos, il est précieux, le calme bonheur. One evening, not 10 short days since, he joined me whilst walking in my alley. He took my hand. I looked up in his face. I thought he meant to arrest my attention. Bon petit ami, said he softly. Douce consolatrice? But through his touch and with his words a new feeling and a strange thought found a course. Could it be that he was becoming more than friend or brother? Did his look speak a kindness beyond fraternity or amity? His eloquent look had more to say. His hand drew me forward. His interpreting lips stirred. No, not now. Here into the twilight alley broke an interruption. It came dual and ominous. We faced two bodeful forms, a woman's and a priest's, Madame Beck and Père Silas. The aspect of the latter I shall never forget. On the first impulse it expressed a Jean-Jacques sensibility, stirred by the signs of affection, just surprised, then immediately darkened over it the jaundice of ecclesiastical jealousy. He spoke to me with unction. He looked on his pupil with sternness. As to Madame Beck, she of course saw nothing, nothing, though her kinsman retained in her presence the hand of the heretic foreigner, not suffering withdrawal, but clasping it close and fast. Following these incidents, that sudden announcement of departure had struck me at first as incredible. Indeed, it was only frequent repetition, and the credence of the 150 minds round me, which forced on me its full acceptance. As to that week of suspense, with its blank yet burning days, which brought from him no word of explanation, I remember, but I cannot describe its passage. The last day broke. Now would he visit us. Now he would come and speak his farewell, or he would vanish mute and be seen by us nevermore. This alternative seemed to be present in the mind of not a living creature in that school. All rose at the usual hour, all breakfasted as usual, all without reference to or apparent thought of their late professor, betook themselves with wonted phlegm to their ordinary duties. So oblivious was the house, so tame, so trained its proceedings, so inexpectant its aspect, I scarce knew how to breathe in an atmosphere thus stagnant, thus smothering. Would no one lend me a voice? Had no one a wish, no one a word, no one a prayer to which I could say, Amen? I had seen them unanimous in demand for the merest trifle, a treat, a holiday, a lesson's remission. They could not, they would not now band to besiege Madame Beck, and insist on a last interview with a master who had certainly been loved, at least by some, loved as they could love. But oh, what is the love of the multitude? I knew where he lived. I knew where he was to be heard of or communicated with. The distance was scarce a stone's throw. Had it been in the next room, unsummoned, I could make no use of my knowledge. To follow, to seek out, to remind, to recall, for these things I had no faculty. Monsieur Emmanuel might have passed within reach of my arm, had he passed silent and unnoticing. Silent and stirless should I have suffered him to go by. Morning wasted, afternoon came, and I thought all was over. My heart trembled in its place, my blood was troubled in its current. I was quite sick, and hardly knew how to keep at my post or do my work. Yet the little world round me plodded on indifferent. All seemed jocund, free of care, or fear, or thought. The very pupils who, 7 days since, had wept hysterically at a startling piece of news, appeared quite to have forgotten the news, its import, and their emotion. A little before 5 o'clock, the hour of dismissal, Madame Beck sent for me to her chamber, to read over and translate some English letter she had received, and to write for her the answer. Before settling to this work, I observed that she softly closed the 2 doors of her chamber. She even shut and fastened the casement, though it was a hot day, and free circulation of air was usually regarded by her as indispensable. Why this precaution? A keen suspicion, an almost fierce distrust, suggested such question. Did she want to exclude sound? What sound? I listened as I had never listened before. I listened like the evening and winter wolf, snuffing the snow, scenting prey, and hearing far off the traveller's tramp. Yet I could both listen and write. About the middle of the letter I heard, what checked my pen, a tread in the vestibule. No doorbell had rung. Rosine, acting doubtless by orders, had anticipated such reveille. Madame saw me halt. She coughed, made a bustle, spoke louder. The tread had passed on to the classes. "Proceed," said Madame, but my hand was fettered, my ear enchained, my thoughts were carried off captive. The classes formed another building. The hall parted them from the dwelling-house. Despite distance and partition, I heard the sudden stir of numbers, a whole division rising at once. "They are putting away work," said Madame. It was indeed the hour to put away work, but why that sudden hush, that instant quell of the tumult? "Wait, Madame, I will see what it is." And I put down my pen and left her. Left her? No, she would not be left. Powerless to detain me, she rose and followed, close as my shadow. I turned on the last step of the stair. "Are you coming too?" I asked. "Yes," said she, meeting my glance with a peculiar aspect, a look clouded yet resolute. We proceeded then, not together, but she walked in my steps. He was come. Entering the first class, I saw him. There once more appeared the form most familiar. I doubt not they had tried to keep him away, but he was come. The girls stood in a semicircle. He was passing round, giving his farewells, pressing each hand, touching with his lips each cheek. This last ceremony, foreign custom permitted at such a parting, so solemn, to last so long. I felt it hard that Madame Beck should dog me thus, following and watching me close. My neck and shoulder shrunk in fever under her breath. I became terribly goaded. He was approaching. The semicircle was almost travelled round. He came to the last pupil. He turned. But Madame was before me. She had stepped out suddenly. She seemed to magnify her proportions and amplify her drapery. She eclipsed me. I was hid. She knew my weakness and deficiency. She could calculate the degree of moral paralysis, the total default of self-assertion, with which, in a crisis, I could be struck. She hastened to her kinsman. She broke upon him volubly. She mastered his attention. She hurried him to the door, the glass door opening on the garden. I think he looked round. Could I but have caught his eye, courage, I think, would have rushed in to aid feeling, and there would have been a charge, and perhaps a rescue. but already the room was all confusion, the semicircle broken into groups. My figure was lost among 30 more conspicuous. Madame had her will. Yes, she got him away, and he had not seen me. He thought me absent. 5 o'clock struck. A loud dismissal bell rang. The school separated. The room emptied. End of section 66. Recording by Leanne Fortune.